if you go to your home page, even if you haven't done Y or your mitochondrial, it's down here in your additional tests and tools section. So it says discover more, and it's in beta version at the moment. So they're trying it out to see what it's like. So if you click on that, that just takes you straight into it. And what it does is it allows you to come in here and to put in any haplogroup that you want to put in. Now, you can put in your own haplogroup if you've done a test, but if you haven't done a test, you can put in any haplogroup that you're aware of. And even if you're female and you haven't, obviously you couldn't do Y-DNA, well, what you might find is that you have got a match who is matching you on one of those lines that would be your Y-DNA line. So say, for example, if you are female and if you have someone who matches your father's surname or even your mother's surname and you wanted to explore that Y line, well, then you will see on your matches page what their haplogroup is. If that person who matches you has done a Y-DNA test, and you can just put in that haplogroup and you can find out some information about that. So what I'm going to do here is put in a haplogroup that it isn't my haplogroup as such, it's 3 or 4 above mine. I just thought I would put in this one because it's just a wee bit easier to explore and to show you what it actually does. So I'm just going to put this one in here, BY159435. And all you do is you just put in the number and show my report. And what it does now is it gives you information about your haplogroup. As I said, the whole idea of this is to try to make it simpler and to gather the information together so as you can understand what it's all about. So this is my haplogroup here. Now, the most interesting thing is it's telling me that it was created in one individual person 300 years ago, around that period. So that's telling me that everyone who shares that haplogroup is related to me within 300 years. Now, that's extremely useful information for me. And this is the reason that I put in a haplogroup that was a couple up from mine. The reason I did that was that there is 4 people who are downstream of this haplogroup. So there's 4 people in this group. There's 4 people who share that particular haplogroup. I'm one of them. My uncle is a second one. My 4th cousin is the 3rd one. So that's the 3 Northern Irish testers. And this 4th person is somebody who has matched me for a number of years on Y-DNA. Now, I knew that he matched me whenever we did Y37. He matches me in Y67, Y111. But now, because I know the haplogroup, I now know that he is matching me around 300 years ago. So what that means is that our common ancestor lived about 300 years ago. And that's telling me here that corresponds to around 1700 with a 95% probability rate. And I think that's pretty good. There's the years that it seems to be between. And this means that he's probably a 5th or a 6th cousin, because our ancestor had to have lived probably around 1700. Now, my ancestor that I'm sharing with my 4th cousin was about 1770. And that's our common ancestor. And I can actually trace back for that particular line. So we're talking maybe 1-2 generations further back than that. So that's what it's telling me. It's telling me a pretty good estimate for the time period. And that is giving me practical information because it's showing my connection to a match. Now, if I just put in my particular haplogroup, then that isn't going to tell me as much because this is giving me a comparison with another person. So then if you look at the haplogroup further back on your big Y results, then you could see your comparison to somebody else who's slightly further out on your tree. So you can put in a variety of different haplogroups here in order to get an age estimate of how far back you have to go on your tree to find the connection to somebody else on your matches page. So this is why it's not just a matter of going in and just putting in your haplogroup. It's a matter of putting in a variety of haplogroups in order to get that information out. So this is telling me here that this group started about 300 years ago, because that's the number that I put in. But it's also telling me that the haplogroup further back is RBY 13905, and it was created about 200 years before that. So that is also giving me more information that it's taken maybe 200 years for the next one to come along. So it's giving you that information, and you can take time and read that there. It's also telling you where people claim that their paternal origins are. So this isn't where the testers are. This is where their family is from. So this can give you an idea of maybe where your family came from. So you can see there that we're all in Ireland back 300 years ago. But as I said there, it says that the paternal line was formed when it branched off from RBY 13905. So that's this one here, that's 500 years ago. Now, if I want to get information on it, I can just click on this link now, and this will take me to the haplogroup before that. And then what that's telling me is it's showing me what testers I have there. So I now have the 3 people from Northern Ireland. I had 1 from Ireland, but now I've got 3 from Ireland. I've got now 2 Canadians coming in. So that's 2 people that can trace their family tree back just to Canada, but can't make that leap across the pond. And they're just getting our name back as far as Canada. But look, we've got 6 in Scotland. So what that's telling me now is that although my family was in Northern Ireland and was probably there 300 years ago, 500 years ago, we were probably in Scotland. Because there's 6 additional people that weren't in my haplogroup. So they're connecting slightly further back, a few generations further back, but they are now giving you that connection back to Scotland. And then I could do the same again. I could go to the previous one, because you can see now that RBY 13905, it branched off this one here. So if I clicked on that, that would take me further back in time. And now I've got 11 in Scotland. And you can see I've got a few more in Northern Ireland, but really not that many. And I've also got a few people now in the United States that, again, can't research any further back than that. So it just allows you to go back in time and to go back one haplogroup at a time in order to see where your family could be from. So if I just go forward again to where I was, so yeah, just go back, right. Okay, I want 13, that was where I was, 13905, and then this was the one here. That's where I started, sorry. Now, when you're looking at haplogroups, don't worry about these big, long numbers. They're just titles. And they're just really, if you think of them as the names of ancestors that we don't know. So basically, they've been given numbers. And the only reason they're given these big numbers is because there's so many of them. So it's to identify someone who was a common ancestor of a particular group of people that you're part of, or that are part of the line that you're looking at the moment. But that's to give you an idea of what they've done in timescales. Now, to me, I think that's a lot more useful than maybe just looking at the block tree or looking at your Y matches, because you're getting that type of a time scale to 95% certainty, really, and you're getting an estimate in actual years as well. So it's not saying just 300 years ago, it's saying 1700, but it is almost certainly to be between 1574 and 1857 that your common ancestor with that person was born. So that's the first thing there. That's your haplogroup story. Then you've got your country frequency. Now, this is showing you how many people in a particular country would share your haplogroup. Now, this isn't going to be very useful for you for recent haplogroups. So you can see there's only 4 in my haplogroup at the moment, So that's not really going to be very useful. But you can see there's a heat map, and the heat map is showing you what countries that's from. So all 4 people are from Ireland. So that's why it's showing British Isles. And it's telling me that less than 1% of people in the UK have that particular group. And that's what it's going to say for most of them. But that is going to be a useful thing if you do a very common haplogroup. And I'm going to do one of them in a second and show you how that can be useful. But normally when you're looking through this, that's not going to be useful. Now, the next one is a bit of a fun thing, and it's again designed to try to make it a wee bit more quirky and a bit more real to people. And what it does is it looks at each haplogroup and it tells you people that are related to you. Now, it's fun because they're so far back, but it's actually accurate, because what it's doing is it's looking at the haplogroup of individuals who have had their DNA processed, and they can then compare them to you. So Joseph Smith, it's telling me about him. I can read about Joseph Smith, see a photograph of him, and it's telling me that I am linked to him around 1700 BC. Now, obviously, he's not a very close relative, but we do have a connection on my Y line. So if I went far enough back, if I went 3,700 years back on my Y line and then back down to him, we would be connected on that line. So you can see here all the people that I have got a connection to. And those people are genuine connections, but it's sort of, you know, it's not speculative. It's real, but it's so far back that, you know that you're going to be related to almost everybody when you go that number of generations back. But it is telling me that it's through my Y line. So it's through my father's line. It's not through any other line in my family. At least I do know what line it's through. So you can read about those people, and you can see then the House of Stuart. You can see there's Copernicus, Charles Darwin, Neil Armstrong, and you can just read about these people. So the whole idea is to add in more famous people here as they go. And I think the first one is always going to be your closest. So, I mean, you can see that a lot of mine are 3,700 years ago. But if they, I think they've added in probably a couple of hundred of these for everyone on Y-DNA. But Y-DNA is very specific. So therefore, that's why some of these connections are going so far back. But over time, what they will do is add an awful lot more in, and then they should be more, they probably still won't be that relevant. I was going to use the word relevant. They're probably still not going to be relevant, because it could still be 500 years ago, 700 years ago, 1,000 years ago. But I think it's quirky, and it's the type of thing that people want to know, that, you know, they do have a connection through that line to those individual people. So it's just a fun thing that you can spend a bit of time looking at if you want to, and if you don't want to, you can just move on past it.
Looking
But then you get what Tony, sorry, what, Richard?
Francis Crick.
Francis Crick, yes. Yeah, he is, what is he? I've heard the name.
DNA.
Oh, yes, he's there. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's why he's there. Yes, that's right. Yes. Yes, I knew the name, but I couldn't think who he was there. So then we're moving on to migration map, and that's what we were saying, Tony, with you, is that has now been added. So what this is doing is showing you how all Y lines started in Africa, and this is showing their path right round. And then what it's doing is showing you where your closest major haplogroup was created. Now, you know what, that I put in the RBY 159435. Well, that one is slightly further up the tree. So everybody in my group is part of RDF 13. And this is in a wee red box. So what you do is you look at the little red circle, and this little red circle is showing you where RDF 13 was created. And that's where it started. So it basically started in England. That's really in England. And that's where it started, and then it would spread around Scotland and Ireland from that particular point. So they think that RDF 13 started there. So you're getting indication of where that haplogroup was created, and that's a few above mine if I go up the tree. So you can go round these and you can just sort of see that that's the path that all the generations would have taken out of Africa to get to RDF 13 that then led to my haplogroup being created. So everyone who's RDF 13, then there was a different groups created out of that, and one of them is mine then. You can also then click on these, and what this is doing is showing you the location of ancient remains that have been found and that have been processed. So each one of them is an individual set of remains, and you can click on those there too. Now those ones are come up here under ancient connections. And these are ones that I am genetically related to. Again, they're quite far back, obviously, because they're ancient remains. But you can see where they were found, what region they were found in. And there's somebody who was found in Galway, and they lived between 275 and 585. So they were in the Roman age, and they are related to me through a paternal ancestor who lived about 3,700 years ago. There's the two bodies that were found in Rathlin Island. They've been processed as well. So again, you can have a look at them. And this is telling you how far back in time your common ancestor would have lived. So there's a lot of information coming in there too. So they are trying to bring ancient DNA in, and they're trying to bring it in an informative way. So not only are you finding out about those, you're finding out the haplogroups of those people, and you're also finding out how they connect to you, and you're getting an age estimate of that as well. So I think those are interesting. So the ones that come up here are going to be specific to you. Now, again, they're going to add more of them as time goes on. And I think they maybe have about 800 or 900 of these already on. And I think they have a few more thousand to put on. So they will be putting them on as time goes on. So these will change if you go back and revisit these. So the next
Martin,
one.
can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Just
yes, Imelda.
Are different companies sharing this, this ancient DNA? Is that being shared with all the different companies?
Well, this site is a standalone site. You don't need to be in FTDNA to view this site. So you can just do a Google search for FTDNA Discover, and it comes up as a separate website for you. They've deliberately done that so as people can use it if they say if they've tested with living DNA, they've got a haplogroup, or even 20 on 23andMe, you get your haplogroup, you see.
Yes.
So anyone could use them, and you can go in and do it.
No, that's not the question. The question is, with regard to ancient DNA, have the historians who have discovered it and processed that DNA shared it with all the different companies? Or is it just FTDNA have it?
No, some make it public, and then it goes into public documentation. So they would maybe produce a report, and then the DNA is, the actual raw data is shared, and then it's hosted on the site, and some of them are available to companies to then download and to process. So what FTDNA has done is they've actively went looking for ones that they can get that are public access. And
that's good to know. That's good to know. I just can't wait to show this to Adam, this ancient connections. This will just blow his mind. Thanks for this.
I think it does mean something. And again, if you're into archaeology and you maybe want to go around some of these sites and look at them, I mean, you can sort of go to these places and go, well, there's Rathlin Island, there is two bodies were found under McCaig's Bar, because you can look that up on the internet. That's where they were found. And these two actually have a connection to me, and it's through my wild line. So you're finding that information out. There's one Ballybunion, in Kerry. So I think it's interesting to go through these things, but it's trying to make Y-DNA relevant to you, because the major complaint about Y-DNA before was that you got a few matches. Sometimes you got a surname match, sometimes you didn't. And it really didn't mean an awful lot to you. But now they're trying to maybe create a site where anyone can make Y-DNA more relevant to them. So that's the idea.
And I've discovered lately we're getting a lot more matches on the Y-DNA coming through now.
That's good. That's good. And
It's
yeah, I
really,
mean,
really good.
there's been a lot of people tested, and
Yeah, it's
within
been
our
fantastic.
project, there's an awful lot of big Ys recently, funny enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm surprised by that because there hasn't even been a sale on. So anyone who's bought it recently has been paying the full price for it. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
why they've been all buying them so many recently, I'm not quite sure. But it does, I think it's maybe because of the launch of the site, is that people are looking at it and going, oh, I would like to know a more specific haplogroup
Could be.
for myself. You know, because if you've done a Y37, then you have one of those high level haplogroups. If you do the big Y, you get a very low level haplogroup. And
Yeah,
then
I did the big
can,
big Y for Adam and the big Y
yeah.
for my dad. So I have both.
So you have a
those,
two
which
to
is
play
good.
around with then, Imelda.
I know, can't wait now.
That's good. So then you get as well a suggested project. Now these are based on the projects that your matches have been into. So in terms of mine, it's based on these 4 people here because I put in this haplogroup at the beginning. So these 4 people, it'll look to see what groups they've joined, and then it will suggest projects to me. So what it's doing is it's suggesting different high-level haplogroup projects. So those are all groups that I would be part of, but they're further up the line. Then it's brought up north of Ireland. It's found that I'm in the Island McGee project, I'm in the McDowell project, and it's bringing up them, the Scottish DNA, Cameron, McDougall. It's just giving you a few suggestions, and then you can just click on them to find out more about that project. The other thing is, it's telling you here how big this project is. So it's telling you there, if you want to go into that project, there's 47 people have joined it that have Y-DNA results that are public. So that's not telling you everyone that's got Y-DNA, and it's not telling you how many are in that project, but it's telling you that 3 people in that project belong to this haplogroup, and that 47 people are sharing their information within that project. So if you're in the project, then you can see their values at Y37 and Y111 and whatever. So it's giving you just a few ideas of projects that you may want to join, because with there being, I don't know, about 10,000 projects, sometimes it's very easy to just miss the one that would be useful to you. And again, with North of Ireland, we have over 7,000 members. But we have, at the moment, apparently 1,137 people who have done a Y test that have made their result public. Now, we have, I think, about 2,500 people who have done Y. So that must mean that some people aren't sharing their results within the project. So again, you can get information on the scope of things from that as well. So it's just putting things in a slightly different way. Then if you want scientific details, this is giving you more information on timescales. So there is the time again. It said around 1700. When I looked at the first one, do you remember it said 1700? But when I look at the scientific details, it's probably closest to the mean, that is 1741. So that's given me an even more precise point if you want to take the mean date. And there is your 95% certainty. So there is your 1574 to your 1857. And don't forget, that is the date of the common ancestor that everybody in that group would share. So everybody who has that haplogroup are all the descendants of one particular individual in which that mutation occurred. That's how they can work this out, because it all goes back to one individual person. Then if you want more scientific information, it gives you the variants. So this is the particular variant that means RB159435. So everyone who is in that group, they have that figure there, that you would normally have a G at that position in your DNA, but our little group has an A at that position. And that's what defines that particular group. So that's just letting you know what constitutes really that group. Then you've got your haplotree. And this is just a wee shortcut into the public haplotree that I feel that a lot of people don't fully understand. So this is the tree of all mankind. And this tree allows you to see every single position. So you've got over 50,000 branches on this tree. And there's over 460 variants. Now, when you do it from that particular place, what it's doing is it's showing me the group. So you see the bottom line there? The bottom line is highlighted, and that's the haplogroup that I put in. So it's showing you where it sits on the haplotree. Now, and it's telling me there's 2 participants in that group. Now, if I go up, if I just follow these wee lines, so this haplogroup here is a subset of this one here. And that's the one that I clicked on earlier that went back about 500 years. So you can see that these 3 groups all grew out of this particular group here. And then you can trace it back to this haplogroup that's a wee bit older again. And then this one goes back to this one goes back to this one. And you can see the numbers are growing too, because there's more people as you go up the tree. So you could then look at all those haplogroups, because I would be positive for all those particular positions too, because all of those people, again, they're all individual people who lived 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago, 700 years ago, and those are all individuals that I am descended from. And then some of the people inherit my particular mutation and down through a particular child of that family, and others will come down through a different child of that family. So if you think of it as a big family tree, whereas the person at the top has maybe got this haplogroup and that's their name, and then all of these ones down below are their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. And that's how you understand that. And then you can look at this country data, and it can tell you then, it can give you an indication of where those people were living at that time. And you can trace your haplogroup back up the tree, back through thousands of years, just by following those lines. And you see we're getting further over to the left. And everybody then is part of RM207. So I could then go back and put in RM207 in Discover and see what come up on that one. But what I'm just going to do for the last here, because I don't want to go on about this too much to you, but I just want to show you the difference, because I did say to you at the beginning that it differs if you want to put in a different group, because I was looking at the frequency. But sorry, I'll just show you the last thing there. The Discover More is just encouraging you to upgrade then. So if you haven't done a Y test, that's where you would start with, and that's your 3 different levels of test that are available. So that's just on the Discover More button at the bottom. So that's everything I've shown you there. But if we just go back to the beginning, now I think I have to go, what do I do? There was a place to do this. I think you can also share this page. It's up in the top right there. If you want to share this page, and you can put that, say, onto Facebook or something and let people see it. What was the one? Right, I have to get to a different group now. Oh yeah, it's at the top there. It's search another haplogroup. I couldn't see it. So what I'm going to do is just do RM269. And probably a lot of people have heard of that one, because that's a very common haplogroup. And a lot of people, when they do a Y37 test, are just going to be told they're RM269. But it's quite far back in time. And it means that there's a lot of different subgroups to that group that we could all be part of. So I just want to show you, if I do that one, just how different it is, because that haplogroup is quite far back in time, as opposed to the one that I've just done, which is a bit more recent. So it's telling me now that it represents a man who's estimated to have been born around 6,000 years ago, plus or minus 800 years. So that's about 3,900 BC. So that's what you're talking about. So people who are RM269 all date back to a group of people who were all connected in the last 6,000 years. And again, it's telling you the group above, that's about 14,000 years old. And again, you could click on that if you wanted. And you can get an idea here for where people can trace their genealogy back to. So you can see there's Scotland, England, Ireland, and a whole load of other places as well. So this is a very common haplogroup. But the one I wanted to show you here was the country frequency. And do you remember we were getting less than 1% when I looked at my very specific haplogroup? Well, this is very useful for a further back haplogroup like this. And this is a heat map. So the countries that are the hottest are the ones that share the biggest proportion of RM269. So if I go to the British Isles, 58% of people that can trace their DNA back to the UK are in RM269. That's a very big proportion. Again, France is 57, Australia is 43, Canada is 53, and the US is 57. There is Mozambique, 100%. So there must have been very many people have tested in Mozambique, and that's maybe why we're getting that. But you can see then that if it did Sweden, it's only 21%. And if it did Iceland, it's 36%. So that is giving you some information on how common a particular haplogroup is. And it's also letting you know that most people in those countries are related within 6,000 years on their Y line. So that is the time period that we're talking about. So just if you match someone on RM269 alone, it's probably not enough, because it shares, I mean, you can see how many people are sharing that particular haplogroup, but there's thousands of haplogroups downstream of that group that all represent particular families that all were descendants of the person that in which RM269 was created. So each of these haplogroups were created in one particular person. So RM269 started because one individual's son inherited a mutation, and that mutation was he got his Y DNA from his father, and it was supposed to be a direct copy, but the DNA made a mistake and there was a mutation in it. And because there was a unique mutation in that copy, it meant that he passed on that mutation to all of his sons, who passed it to their sons, who passed it to their sons, and it's still been passed right down to the present day. So that's why I'm saying, if you think of all this as a family tree, because RM269 did start with one individual man. So everybody is descendant, everyone who is RM269 now is actually a descendant of that one nameless individual who's just now called RM269. So don't think of haplogroups as groups, but think of them more as an individual person that you're descended from, and that will maybe make a bit more sense.